Stop. Before you close this video, before you scroll to something easier, I need you to sit with one number for 5 seconds. 9.3 million. That is the median projection, not the pessimistic projection, the median, for the number of American jobs vulnerable to AI-driven displacement within the next 2 to 5 years. A range of $200 billion to $1.5 trillion in annual wages. Gone. Reassigned, automated. And that number was published last month. 89% of the class of 2026, people who spent 4 years and tens of thousands of dollars building credentials, now believe AI could eliminate their entry-level role before they've made their first student loan payment. That figure was 64% just 12 months ago. A 25-point jump in a single year. 37% of business leaders, more than 1 in 3, have already told their boards they plan to replace human workers with AI systems by the end of this year. Not explore the option, not consider the possibility. Replace. And in the middle of all of this, the layoffs, the restructurings, the quiet disappearance of entire job categories, we are asking the wrong question. We are asking, how do I compete with the machine? We are furiously upskilling, prompt engineering, building our personal brand, pivoting our resume, chasing the next certification that will prove our relevance to an algorithm that is, quietly, becoming capable of generating the certification itself. And here is what 2,000 years of Stoic philosophy wants to say to you about that strategy. You are fighting on the wrong battlefield. Because the machine can automate your output. It can automate your process. It can automate your report, your email, your code, your analysis, your customer service script, your legal memo, your marketing copy. What it cannot touch, what it has never been able to touch, what no technology in human history has ever been able to touch, is the thing the Stoics spent their entire lives building. They called it Prohairesis. Your capacity for reasoned choice, your judgment, your character, your soul's orientation toward what is true and good and right. That is not a skill. It cannot be learned in a boot camp. It cannot be added to a LinkedIn profile. It cannot be prompt engineered. It cannot be scaled. It is the only asset in your portfolio that appreciates in a world that is automating everything else, and almost no one is investing in it. This video is about that investment. Let me give you the full picture, because you deserve accurate information and not the kind of selective data that either dismisses your concern or amplifies it into paralysis. The anxiety you feel about AI and your career is legitimate. It is not irrational. It is not weakness. It is an accurate read of a genuinely disrupted landscape. We are in what researchers are calling a pivotal transition phase, the period where generative AI evolves into agentic AI. Systems that don't just respond to prompts, but that plan, reason, act, and collaborate independently. This is the shift from AI that talks to AI that does. By the end of 2026, approximately 40% of enterprise applications are expected to include autonomous AI agents capable of executing entire business workflows independently, not assisting with workflows, executing them end to end, without a human in the loop. Manual data entry roles face a 95% automation risk. 7.5 million data entry and administrative jobs could be lost by 2027. Customer service representatives face an 80% automation risk. Paralegals face an 80% risk of automation by 2026. Legal researchers face a 65% risk by 2027. Almost 1/3 of organizations now anticipate AI-driven workforce reductions in the near term, with a particular focus on process-heavy, mid-skill cognitive work. I am giving you these numbers not to frighten you. I am giving you them because the Stoics had a practice called premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of adversity. The deliberate, clear-eyed confrontation with what could go wrong, not so that you collapse under its weight, but so that you are never blindsided by it, so that you have already built your response before the crisis arrives. The man who has looked at these numbers calmly and thought carefully about what they mean for his life is in a fundamentally different position than the man who is either ignoring them or drowning in panic about them. Now here is the reframe, and this is where the philosophy begins. The SHRM 2025 survey found that 63.3% of all jobs include non-technical barriers that would prevent complete automation displacement, including client preferences for human interaction, regulatory requirements, and cost-effectiveness considerations. PwC's 2025 Global AI Jobs Barometer found that job numbers are rising even in highly automatable roles. And workers with AI skills command wage premiums up to 56% higher than their peers. 150 million jobs may be displaced by 2027, but 170 million new ones are expected to emerge. The net effect globally is growth. The 30% of what you do today that will be automated by 2030 is exactly the 30% you should be most eager to give away. So you can focus on the 70% AI cannot easily replace: judgment, context, relationships, and decision-making. The question is not whether AI will change the landscape. It will. It already is. The question is, what kind of person are you building yourself into while the landscape changes? Because the landscape has always changed. The printing press devastated the professional scribe. The automobile destroyed the horse and buggy industry. The personal computer made entire categories of clerical work obsolete. And in every single technological transition in human history, the people who survived and thrived were not the ones who competed most aggressively with the machine. They were the ones who understood what the machine could not do and built their entire value around that irreplaceable remainder. The Stoics would say, "You have been asking the wrong question. Stop asking what AI can do. Start asking what you are made of." Epictetus opens the Enchiridion, his handbook for living, with what is arguably the single most practical sentence in the history of philosophy. Not the most beautiful, not the most complex, the most useful. He writes, "Some things are within our power, while others are not." That's it. That's where he starts. Not with metaphysics, not with cosmology, not with abstract virtue theory. He starts with a clean, brutal division of reality into two categories. Ta f hemen, things within our power. Ta uk f hemen, things not within our power. Within our power, our values, our judgments, our choices, our effort, our character, our response to what happens to us. Outside our power, everything else. The market, the economy, the pace of technological development, which jobs get automated, what your company decides, what the algorithm prioritizes, what your industry looks like in 5 years, whether your specific role exists in 2030. And here is the Stoic term for everything outside your control: adiaphora, indifference. Things that are neither good nor bad in themselves. Things that are simply conditions you exist within and must navigate. I want you to feel how radical this is, because in 2026, we have built an entire culture around the management and optimization of indifference. We track market trends. We monitor industry reports. We obsess over the trajectory of AI capabilities. We refresh LinkedIn for news about which companies are expanding and which are contracting. We read every article about which skills will be valuable in 2 years, as if by consuming enough information about the future, we can secure our position in it. And the Stoics are not saying, stop gathering information. They are not saying, be passive, be ignorant, don't plan. They are saying, do not confuse the map for the territory. Do not confuse your knowledge of external conditions for the thing that actually determines your outcomes. The thing that determines your outcomes is your prohairesis, your faculty of reasoned choice, the inner mechanism by which you take any external condition, including the rise of AI, including a layoff, including an industry collapse, and decide what it means and what you will do about it. Prohairesis is the one thing no employer can give you and no technology can take. It is the operating system underneath every skill you have. And unlike every skill in your portfolio, it cannot be automated. Because it is not a process. It is not a procedure. It is not a pattern that can be learned, replicated, and scaled. It is you, your actual, irreducible self, the part that chooses. Here is what this means practically. Your value in the market of 2026 and beyond is not your output. Your output is increasingly replicable. Your value is the quality of the judgment, the character, and the moral seriousness that produces the output. And those things, unlike the output itself, compound over time. They deepen. They become more nuanced, more reliable, more irreplaceable with every year you invest in them. The machine gets better at what it does. You get better at what only you can do. That is the only sustainable career strategy in a world of exponential automation. The Stoics identified 4 cardinal virtues, not as abstract ideals for philosophers to debate, but as practical capacities developed through daily discipline that a man uses to navigate an uncertain world. They were Phronesis, practical wisdom, Dichotomy, justice, Andrea, courage, and Sophrosine, temperance. These 4 virtues are, in the context of 2026, the most sophisticated career shield ever devised. Not because the Stoics were thinking about AI, but because they were thinking about something older and harder. How does a man of character survive and remain himself in a world that is constantly trying to reduce him to a function? The Roman Empire was automating human beings long before silicon existed. It was optimizing people into roles, into social positions, into economic functions, and then discarding them when those functions were no longer needed. Seneca watched it. Epictetus lived it as a slave. Marcus Aurelius governed it from the top. And they built a philosophy for exactly that world, a philosophy that turns out to be precisely what we need for ours. Virtue 1, Phronesis, practical wisdom, the judgment that data cannot replicate. Here is the single most important thing I can tell you about AI in 2026. It is extraordinarily good at pattern recognition inside large data sets. It is extraordinarily bad at judgment in genuinely novel situations. AI can analyze everything that has happened before and tell you what has tended to happen in similar circumstances. What it cannot do is walk into a room, read the unspoken tension between 2 people, understand what is really being asked versus what is literally being said, and make a decision that honors the full complexity of the moment. That is phronesis, practical wisdom, the capacity to perceive what a situation actually calls for, morally, strategically, humanly, and to act accordingly. Not what the data says, not what the model predicts. What the moment requires, Gartner warns that atrophy of critical thinking skills due to Gen AI use will push 50% of organizations to require AI-free skills assessments by 2026. Read that again. The organizations that are deploying AI most aggressively are simultaneously building assessments to identify humans who can still think independently of it. Because they know what they are losing when they outsource judgment to the machine. The man who develops phronesis, who practices it deliberately, who reads widely and thinks slowly, and exposes himself to moral complexity and refuses to delegate his judgment to an algorithm. That man becomes exponentially more valuable as AI becomes exponentially more capable. Because what AI cannot do is be wise. It can be accurate, it can be fast, it can be comprehensive. But wisdom is the product of lived experience, moral failure, genuine suffering, genuine triumph, and the slow accumulation of perspective that only a human life produces. You have something a language model never will: a biography. Build it deliberately. Let it make you wiser. Virtue 2. Dichotomy, justice, human trust in a sea of deep fakes. The SHRM survey found that client preferences for human interaction remain one of the primary non-technical barriers preventing complete automation. Translation: people still want to deal with people. Not because people are more efficient, because people are trustworthy in a way that machines are not. When those people have actually built trust, we are living through what may be the most profound crisis of institutional and interpersonal trust in modern history. Deepfakes, AI-generated content at industrial scale, simulated relationships, synthetic voices, a world in which you cannot be certain that the person you are interacting with is real, that the information you are receiving is accurate, or that the company you are dealing with means what it says. In this environment, dichotomy, justice, in the Stoic sense of genuine fairness, honesty, and right relationship with others, is not just a moral virtue. It is a marked differentiator of extraordinary power. The Stoics define justice not as compliance with rules, but as the active commitment to giving every person what they are actually due. Honesty when honesty is costly. Fairness when self-interest points the other way. Integrity that holds not because it's being observed, but because it's who you are. In a world saturated with AI-generated content and synthetic relationships, the man who is genuinely, reliably, demonstrably trustworthy, who does what he says what he means, and treats every person he encounters with real consideration. That man accumulates a form of social capital that no algorithm can generate and no automation can replicate. Trust is built in human time, through repeated, consistent acts of integrity performed in full view of other human beings. It cannot be compressed, faked, or automated. And in 2026, it is becoming the rarest and therefore most valuable currency in professional life. Build your reputation for honesty with the same discipline you apply to any professional skill. Guard it with the same intensity, because it will outlast any credential you have, and no machine will ever take it from you. Virtue 3. Andrea, courage, the ability to pivot when the bubble bursts. The word bubble in the title of this video is not rhetorical. There is a serious debate in economic circles about whether the current AI investment landscape, with its extraordinary valuations, its furious capital deployment, and the gap between AI capability promises and proven economic returns, constitutes a bubble in the classical sense. PwC forecasts agent-exposed roles seeing 66% skill obsolescence, with 40% automation in services like customer support projected before 2030. The roles being automated fastest are generating enormous short-term efficiency gains for the companies deploying AI. but the downstream effects on purchasing power, consumer demand, and the broader economy are far less certain. Bubbles burst. Not always. Not on a predictable schedule. But the history of technology adoption is littered with periods of extraordinary hype followed by painful correction. The dot-com bubble, the 2008 financial crisis, the crypto collapse. In every case, the people who survived and rebuilt were not the ones who had bet most aggressively on the thing that was rising. They were the ones who had maintained the courage to question consensus, diversify their foundations, and pivot when the evidence demanded it. Andrea, Stoic courage is not recklessness. It is not the refusal to feel fear. It is the capacity to act correctly in the face of fear. To look at a situation clearly, even when clarity is uncomfortable, and to make the hard choice that your honest judgment demands. In career terms, this means the courage to pivot before you're forced to look at your role honestly and ask, what percentage of what I do could be automated in 3 years? What skills am I building that have independent value regardless of what happens to this industry? Am I building my identity around a function that is disappearing, or around a set of capacities that compound? It means the courage to say, I was wrong about this, when the evidence accumulates. To change course without needing external permission. To begin again, at 35, at 45, at 55. Without the comfort of certainty about the outcome. Marcus Aurelius faced multiple crises across his reign that demanded exactly this kind of courage. Military betrayals, plague, economic pressure, the knowledge that Rome itself was fraying at its edges. He did not deny the reality of the crises. He did not pretend the threats weren't real. He prepared, he adapted, and he moved. Not because the outcome was guaranteed, but because movement in the right direction was what his character demanded. That is the courage the AI bubble demands of you. Not the courage to bet everything on a rising wave. The courage to see clearly when the wave is cresting, and to have built something in yourself that survives the correction. Virtue 4. Sophrosin, temperance. Not over-leveraging your life on digital hype. This is the virtue that is hardest to talk about in 2026, because the entire culture of professional ambition runs directly against it. Sophrosin is temperance, moderation, self-governance, the refusal to be controlled by appetite. The Stoics considered it the virtue that makes all others possible, because a man who cannot govern his own impulses cannot consistently exercise wisdom, justice, or courage. His decisions will be driven by fear or greed, or the desire for status, rather than by reasoned judgment. In the context of the AI economy of 2026, the dominant form of intemperance is what I want to call digital leverage overextension. Betting your identity, your livelihood, your sense of self-worth, your financial stability on the continued ascent of a specific technology or market trend. 37% of business leaders expect to replace human workers with AI by close of 2026 as they move from experimental pilots to full-scale automation. The pressure to be on the right side of this transition, to have AI skills, to be building in the AI space, to be positioning yourself ahead of the wave, is intense, real, and in many ways legitimate. But Sophrosin asks a clarifying question. At what cost? The man who remortgages his professional identity entirely around a single technology trend, who neglects the slow, unglamorous work of character development in pursuit of the fast, legible work of skill certification, who leverages his financial security to bet on a market moving in a direction he cannot fully control. That man has violated Sophrosine. And the Stoics would say, he has done something more dangerous than a bad investment. He has handed his peace of mind to the market. Temperance in 2026 looks like this. Use AI as a tool. Learn it seriously. Leverage it intelligently. But do not become dependent on it for your sense of value. Do not outsource your judgment to it. Do not build your entire professional identity around it. Because the tool will change, the market will shift, and the man whose identity is entirely tool-dependent will be in crisis when the tool does. Build your identity around your character. Around what you know, not just what you can do. Around the quality of your relationships, your reputation, your judgment, your wisdom. Around the things that were valuable before any particular technology existed, and will be valuable long after this one has been superseded by the next one. That is temperance. And it is, right now, a radical act. Theory without practice is philosophy's most common failure. So let me be specific. First, audit your time through the lens of Prohairesis. Take this week and track how many of your working hours are spent on activities that could, in principle, be automated, and how many are spent on activities that require the irreducible elements of your character. Judgment calls, complex relationships, novel problems, creative decisions that require moral weight. If the ratio is heavily tilted toward the automatable, you are not building a career. You are building a function, and functions get automated. Begin deliberately shifting that ratio. Not all at once, but with the Stoic discipline of consistent, daily action in the right direction. Second, commit to deep work as a Stoic practice. Gartner predicts that atrophy of critical thinking skills due to Gen AI use will push 50% of organizations to require AI-free skills assessments by 2026. The capacity to think deeply, independently, and at length without external stimulation or AI assistance is becoming rare, and rare things become valuable. The man who can sit with a difficult problem for 3 hours without reaching for his phone, without prompting a model, without outsourcing the discomfort of genuine thinking. That man is building a cognitive capacity that is not just professionally valuable. It is the foundation of phronesis, of real wisdom, and it cannot be built any other way. 1 hour of genuine, distraction-free, deep thinking per day. No shortcuts. This is your Stoic training regimen. Third, invest in relationships with the discipline you invest in skills. In a world of AI-generated content and synthetic interaction, genuine human relationship, built slowly, through real care, real honesty, real attention, becomes one of the most valuable assets a man can hold. Not your network in the LinkedIn sense. Your reputation, your actual relationships with people who know your character, who trust your word, who would speak for you in a room you're not in. These cannot be automated. They cannot be prompt engineered. They are built in human time through the daily practice of Dichotomy, of actually giving people what they are due. Fourth, practice premeditatio malorum about your career. Once per quarter, sit down with a pen and paper, not a screen, and ask yourself, what is the realistic worst case for my professional situation in 2 years? What if my role is significantly automated? What if my industry contracts? What would I do? What would I still have? This is not pessimism. This is the Stoic practice of keeping your internal ground solid, regardless of external weather. The man who has done this exercise clearly is never blindsided. He has already built his response. He acts with calm precision when the moment arrives, while others are paralyzed by shock. Fifth, detach your identity from your output. This is the hardest one, and it is the most important. You are not your job title. You are not your productivity. You are not your role in the AI economy hierarchy. You are not what you produce in a given quarter. These are indifferents, external conditions. They matter in practical terms. You should care about them and work at them. But they are not you. You are the quality of your judgment, the consistency of your honesty, the depth of your care for the people in your life, the courage of your choices when courage is required, the discipline of your character when no one is watching. That is your inner citadel, and it is, by definition, the one thing in your professional life that can't be automated, because it is the one thing that was never a process to begin with. 2,000 years ago, Marcus Aurelius ruled the most powerful empire on earth. He commanded armies. He governed economies. He managed technologies and crises and disruptions that, in their time, felt as total and overwhelming as what we are living through now. And in the private pages of his meditations, written for no audience, for no performance, for no career advancement, he wrote words that are, in 2026, more relevant than anything in any career guide, any LinkedIn article, any AI upskilling certification. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. And elsewhere, the line I want you to carry out of this video: the mind adapted to its circumstances finds in every obstacle it faces a new opportunity. That is not motivational language. That is a philosophical architecture. A blueprint for how a man of character survives any disruption, technological, economic, political, personal, that the world throws at him. The AI bubble of 2026 will do what bubbles do. It will expand. It will, in some form, eventually correct. It will create winners and casualties in proportions we cannot yet predict. Jobs will disappear. New ones will emerge. The landscape will look completely different in 5 years than it does today. And in the middle of all of that change, one thing will remain constant. The man who has built his inner citadel, who has developed his judgment through daily practice, who has built his reputation through consistent integrity, who has cultivated the courage to pivot and the temperance not to over-leverage his soul on market trends, that man will not only survive the disruption, he will emerge from it more himself than he was before it began. Because that is what the Stoics have always known about adversity. It does not reveal character. It builds it. For the man willing to use it as a forge rather than cower from it as a threat. The machine is coming. It is already here. Build your inner citadel. That is the only asset it cannot touch. Drop your answer in the comments right now. One sentence only. The skill I'm building that no machine can automate is blank. I read every single comment, and I'll be responding below. And if this hits someone you know, someone who is scared about their career right now, someone who is asking the wrong question about AI, share it with them. This might be the reframe they need. Your mind is the fortress. Start building it today.